Okay. Anyway, I have a couple topics we should probably discuss.
All right,
involving
let's hear
fake
'em.
news. The first one, I wanna bring up the dictionary definition of fake news.
Well,
And
tell us,
that
Mr.
is-
Smith.
That is that false stories that appear to be news spread on the internet or using other media, usually created to influence political views or as a joke. That's from dictionarycambridge.com. Anyway, but the important
Dictionarycambridge.org.
.org. That's my bad. That's my bad. But I think the main takeaway there is the influence political views or as a joke. So in the case of a joke, it'd be like satire or like like The Onion is not meant to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Like you all know The Onion. So, okay, yeah. So like it's not meant to be taken seriously. It's meant for purely satire. However, and that's usually not the issue with fake news. The issue with fake news usually lies in the political views department, where a political view is switched or like altered or influenced based on
That's tough.
based on the I lost my train of thought. God dang it.
And take a look.
How the political views.
Oh
A lot of
okay.
political views.
Yeah.
Like
but
they influence like
yes.
the credibility of the report.
Yeah. They basically that not only that but also the idea of creating like a fake story or like a conspiracy theory to try like we saw that a lot during the 2016 election. There were a lot of allegations being thrown around, none of which were proven true. Most of which were not proven true. There's some still investigation on that, but there were a lot of allegations that were thrown around involving like basically trying to diminish the credibility of a candidate. So it kind of goes to show that fake news can be harmful in a way that makes a democracy not run as smoothly as it should, or at least like elections not run as smoothly as they should. So do you guys have any?
All right, well, if you're done explaining, I have a question to present to you and the guest.
Okay, yeah.
Would you consider biased news to be fall into the category of fake news, or would you consider it to be a separate category in and of itself?
I feel like it's partly like I feel like if you have biased news and you have fake news, I feel like in and of themselves they are separate entities, but they are heavily entwined at times. Like biased news is not the same as fake news, but there are times when you can have something that is both fake news and biased news. Case in point, what we were talking about earlier, where you have like a like fake news that's meant to push a certain political agenda.
What would your opinion be on this,
I
Mr.
would
Delio?
say that fake news and biased news are like two different things. Because like biased news, I think is really not showing the full truth of a certain topic, whereas fake news is like pushing a fake truth. So
I can see that.
All right, and if that's the case, would you consider the story about the MAGA case to be fake news or biased news? Since
which MAGA case are you reference to?
Since the case we're going to the festival, the news reporters say that the kids are like insulting Indian folk.
Okay.
They had no idea like what the truth was, so they just kept on like talking trash on the kids. And then like once the truth came out and like realized the kids were doing nothing wrong, they kind of just like didn't report on that at all and kind of just like they pretty much just tried to like what's the word I'm trying to say like just scandalize the children as much as possible. And then when they realized their story had no credibility, they just like backed off.
Drop the story, yeah.
Yeah, they dropped the story completely because then
It didn't serve their political agendas. Would you consider that to be more fake news or biased news?
That's definitely biased news, not fake news.
Well, I don't know. You could argue that it's fake news because they had most of the.
Because they like reported
See,
a complete falsehood.
this is why I said that they are kind of intertwined, because like you can have biased news that was clearly meant to push the agenda of like not being that kind of like a bigot or like that kind of person that's gonna insult other other ethnicities. But at the same time, they had all the facts wrong, so they were technically reporting fake news.
Yeah.
So that's why I said that
Right.
while they're two separate entities, they're kind of like linked together at
I would
times.
say like being biased leaves you more susceptible to believing fake news that supports your position.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, so if we want to move on to the next part, we actually have from an interview with a psychologist named, I hope I'm getting this right, Denagel Young, and basically he said when he was asked about like fake news, he said, so compared to what we see in traditional communication, there is this enhanced attention, enhanced interest, and enhanced processing that happens. So things that you hear in the context of humor will be more on the top of your mind. And that brings us to the other side of fake news that we haven't talked about yet, satire, in which what he's basically saying is that satire, because it's more comical, in basically it's easier for humans to remember things that are a lot more comical or like ridiculous to them.
Yeah.
So if you have like a comical or like ridiculous story like that is supposed to be taken as satire, there's a chance that people could take it as legitimate news if they don't know any better. And not only that, but it sticks in their mind a lot easier, so it travels a lot faster because people those are the articles that catch people's minds if they don't know any better, or if they don't, like, say someone sees like an article from The Onion, like we can go back to that, but they don't know what The Onion is. They don't realize it's a satire news, like it does satire news. Then they would basically they wouldn't realize that that's fake news. They realize, or like that it's supposed to be taken comical, and that they would immediately assume that there is some credibility there because it's a news article. Not every news article gets published. We'll get back to that. But like the idea that basically because it's comical, it sticks in our minds, and people that don't know any better are going to spread that misinformation without realizing what they're doing.
All right, then I'd like to ask another question. Where do you two draw the line between like good satirical and bad satirical news? So I don't think it has a problem with, like SNL and such. Like obviously it's like satirical, in that kind of manner. Like they're just doing it as a joke.
Yeah.
However, there are some that like kind of blend the lines like maybe a little bit too far and like kind of do things to don't really like inform people well enough that they're just completely joking.
Yeah. I think there needs to be a level of like ridiculousness to it. Like it has to be very apparent that something is not right with the article. But if it's something that like seems semi-realistic and doesn't really, like I feel like it has to like over exaggerate in order to be satire, and in order for it to like, you know, be kind of like a safe satire article that's not gonna spread any misinformation.
Mr. Delia.
I would say that there's like no bad satire. Like it doesn't need to be ridiculous or anything. Like because satire is just supposed to be like a joke. So.
Yeah, but you also have to keep in mind that part of that is like there's a lot of people that don't really get satire, like in terms of like finding it funny or like being able to understand the delivery. So that's why I was saying like you kind of need the delivery to be like a little more eccentric, on like having like a really weird, like even just having like a really weird headline that like makes absolutely no sense. That would probably be enough. But like having something that's like seems semi-realistic or believable, it kind of I would probably draw the line there because it has it could have a potential negative effect on anyone that's not really well informed or doesn't really get satire.
All right, then I would like to pose a follow-up question. What like actions would be ideal to take in order to kind of make satire news more obvious and make just real news more obvious as well?
Do you have anything on that, Dean?
Well,
I guess there's not much real news can do about it except like stop spreading normal misinformation. Like really, what normal news needs to do is just.
I feel like people are gonna believe what they want to believe.
Yeah.
Because like even with real news, like vaccines and everything.
Yeah.
People still be like, nope, that's.
Nope,
because it just they don't believe with it. So. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people that just don't believe something because it doesn't align with their beliefs. So I think part of it might be just like steering away from like political news and like, but like obviously that's going to take place anyways, and every news source is going to have some form of bias, whether it's apparent or not. So I think part of it is up to the people to really understand like what really like needs to be done about like understanding the difference between satire or just fake news or like credible news.
All right.
Can we go back to the quote you said before where
Yeah.
he says humor sticks in your mind more?
Yeah.
I would argue that like anything that traumatic is gonna stick in your mind more than humor. Because when I heard fake news about like massacres and things like such, I didn't like want to believe it wasn't true because I would feel terrible if I was demeaning the victims of the massacre.
And those are probably the most those are the most dangerous kinds of because like not only that but like you're spreading the misinformation that there was harm done to people by other people.
Yeah.
So that
Isn't
kind
that
of
essentially what happened at the Pizzagate incident?
Yeah, okay, that's actually a good point, Kellen. We can lead into that. That was actually what we were going to talk about next. So, the Pizzagate incident. The fake news spread that Hillary Clinton was involved in a, for lack of a better term, a human trafficking ring inside a pizzeria known as Comet Ping Pong. And that in and of itself is not very good because, you know, you're spreading misinformation not only about a person but about an establishment that's going to ruin their credibility. But it takes a turn for the worse because a man known as Edgar Madison Welch took a...
Edgar Park?
Yeah, we're at Edgar Park. So, but he took a where was it? Yeah, there we are. An AR-15 style rifle, and he shot 3 times at the pizzeria. Luckily, no one was harmed, but he was arrested and sentenced to, I don't think I wrote it here. He was sentenced to like a good amount of time in jail though for firing.
He got the news from InfoWars, correct?
Partly. It did mention that he did listen to Alex Jones and InfoWars, who had specifically stated on one of his radio shows that Hillary Clinton and I quote has personally murdered and chopped up children.
All right.
Yeah. So
if I remember correctly, the Alex Jones was not punished in any way, correct?
Yeah, he was not punished in any way, and like we can kind of bring that.
Wasn't he like removed from YouTube and all of the?
Well, he was, but like
is that
legally there was no backlash to him.
Or was he removed for like a different reason? Like, was this part of the?
I think it was like part of like the overall reason that they took him off. But going back to the.
Do you think that he should be held accountable for that?
I mean, I think that he should. I think especially when you're in a profession like journalism, there's a certain level of not just credibility for your own benefit, but for the benefit
kind of
of
like
other
a duty
people.
to society, correct?
Yeah, it is like a duty to society. You have to be able to. If you're going to be in journalism, you can't share just fake ideas.
Then would you believe that sites like Alex Jones and sites that slander others for like political, satirical, just like their own benefits essentially? Do you think that they should be like punished in any way, or do you think like that would be in violation of the First Amendment?
See, that's the touchy. Yeah, that's the touchy situation. Is that it would restrict freedom of speech and freedom of press, and that's the main issue with fake news. Is that there's nothing to really moderate it because people can just argue that it's a violation of freedom of speech or freedom of press. So
I think Alex Jones had to go back and like redact some of his statements though, and like
he
was wrong.
Yes, he has had to do that, and that I think is a step in the right direction of making these people admit that what they told was not the truth, or not at least not the whole truth.
The Sandy Hook massacres, right? So they were actors, right? Or was it Sandy Hook?
I think it was. It was either Sandy Hook or Columbine, but like
no,
that.
I don't think it was Columbine.
No, it was
Sandy Hook.
I think it was Sandy Hook.
No, it might have been the newest one with like David Hogg.
Okay, anyway.
And
it's not particularly relevant.
It's not.
He on one of the school shootings. He's been saying some lies.
And it shows the really harmful effect, especially this Pizzagate incident shows the really harmful effects of what fake news can bring, because you have a person that fired 3 shots into a pizzeria that could, luckily it didn't harm anybody, but it could have potentially harmed them.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about is Schmeck v. U.S., I believe. That was a Supreme Court case where the person was like prevented from speaking due to like wartime conditions. Like it was like it posed like actual harm.
They couldn't because it wasn't it ruled that it was like
It was like fire the movie theater. That was the analogy used in that case, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that basically if it causes present danger to basically anybody, and in this case, like they couldn't reveal, like you wouldn't be able to reveal like battle strategies or like battle movements of like an army.
I'm wondering if like
That case you were talking about, was that with a pamphlet, right? He was like trying to hand out a pamphlet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Would slander potentially be like involved in that? As in like you're kind of like harming someone, like though not physically, like you're damaging their reputation. You're like kind of like trying to prevent them from ever being able to like be involved in politics or like in society ever again. Like kind of like the like just false allegations in general, like just like slandering people, ruining their lives. Like
because I feel like at least for things like say like the Pizzagate incident where like the fake news had a clear harmful effect to people and could cause like an actual imminent danger.
Yeah.
I think though in those situations it makes sense to restrict it, but with political slander, it's another. I agree that it can greatly harm a person's like a person as a political figure and like their entire livelihood. I think the issue is whether by present danger they mean physical like harmful danger to your life, like to your to being alive, or whether it could be like danger to your livelihood or like your family's status or something like that. I don't know what the stance is on that.
I mean, I know like multiple people who have been like accused wrongly of things by fake news have like had various death sentences to them. So I mean, like their actions could potentially be
that. That is a good point. See, this is why like fake news is such a prevalent issue that like for the most part needs restriction. Like I don't think there's anybody in the world that would say, like any rational person in the world that would say that fake news is a good thing.
Yeah. I think like therefore like potentially if they did it in the right way, someone could bring like a course against fake news to the Supreme Court and use like Schmeck v. U.S. as a potential like precedent for the case.
That's true. But
you have any other questions for us?
Dean, do you have any final comments?
I was just gonna ask, like, in the case of Pizzagate, how come the government didn't like step in sooner and like debunk any of the false allegations?
Well, I think part of it is that like I mean they even might have tried, but like well not only that, but like the information spread so fast, and it did specifically state that that where Welch lived. They didn't have a lot of internet access or like anything. It was just kind of spread through word of mouth. And then when he finally installed like a computer in his house, he went online and searched it up and found a ton of fake news articles about it. And him being like not very like tech savvy or like knowing much about the internet, immediately believed them because he wasn't fully aware of the idea of fake news. He's even said that like at times Alex Jones is a bit eccentric, but he never has like openly stated that he's completely false, because in his mind he's still a journalist, and that there has to be a level of credibility when in actuality there isn't. For the most part, they can kind of get away with saying whatever they want. Like sure, there can be like backlash afterwards, but there's nothing restricting them from saying it at the time and having that news spread like wildfire incredibly quickly. So
you said like he got a computer and like searched up and like there's a ton of stuff that popped
up. There was like a ton of fake news articles because it spreads
like Google, Safari, Firefox be allowed to put those on the front page when you search the topic and not credible news sources? Like I know YouTube's been like cracking down on conspiracy media.
And so has Facebook's actually been cracking down on like fake news articles because Mark Zuckerberg got a lot of backlash for that. But like I feel like it's kind of hard to moderate what's fake and what's real without like reading every single article. So like I think there probably should be something that like restricts it. there could probably be something done, but I don't know much of what those companies could do, because like the way that like Google search works is that like it's specific algorithms rather than just like what's the most popular. Like there's certain algorithms of like keywords and stuff. So like and that's one of the reasons why fake news spreads so quickly, is because they use certain terms that like people are gonna like search up, and they have like really insane headlines that like really catch people's eyes. So I feel like that's part of the issue, is how the fake news is presented in the first place.
Yeah, then perhaps you think that clickbait culture is like, in a way, responsible for like the rapid spreading of fake news and like its prevalence? Because I think we've like ever seen it like on this level in like our country's history.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong about that though.
And part of that comes from just
being so connected.
Yeah, being so connected over the internet. Like the internet has opened a huge source for like all kinds of media outlets, and every single one of those could potentially share a fake news article and spread it all over their site, whether even the company realizes it or not. Like there's a massive risk, and like there are a ton of harmful effects of fake news, and so I feel like it's something that definitely it's an issue that definitely needs to be like kind of looked into more, and needs a little bit more focus from not only from like a political standpoint, but like from like a social security standpoint. So
all right, I have like a little hypothetical situation. So let's say that like we had a lot more people, like let's say 1,000, 10,000 people, and we like started a movement in order to like get rid of fake news. Like what legislative action like would we pursue in order to cut down on the fake news?
I would propose like a change in the algorithm, so it's not as easy to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
when you keep
that's
clicking on
true.
things, like you should be able to like get a diversified opinions,
like
instead of like only getting things to support your.
Yeah, I agree. I think there could be legislation that kind of forces those companies like Google or like to like put into their algorithms something that can help prevent the rapid spread of fake news and the promotion of more credible news sources. So
Yeah, I know there's like plenty of regulation agencies, and I like find it hard to believe that like if the government really wanted to, and like if the people had like the motivation to like rise up, like the constituents just kind of told their Congress from like stop with all the fake news stuff. I feel like it wouldn't be that difficult in order to pass legislation limiting what the news sources can do, assuming that around like the First Amendment, but like using the Schmeck v. U.S. President.
yeah, I definitely think there's something that could and should be done. So, all right, Kellen, do you have any final thoughts? We should probably be wrapping up.
Yeah, say some thoughts on wrap up. I just had like one final thing to say. And I was just saying that like it's not only the duty of like the laws, like I was saying before, but I think it's like the duty of like us as like a generation and like our American culture in order to change and evolve, in order to like just be more cynical, like not in like a bad way, just like be more, I guess, skeptical of news is a better word. And it's like making sure like we as people are less easily fooled and are kind of like more mature and complete in our thought, and just like less believing of like things that just enforce our pre-existing ideas.
Yeah, I agree, and this will be my final thought. I think there's a responsibility of us as like people, as citizens, as consumers, to, like you said, be more skeptical of like what we read online. I also do think though that there is a certain standard that needs to be held for certain like journalism as a whole in order to help prevent it. And you know what, Dean, since you're our guest, I'll let you have the final word.
Fake news is bad.
Thank you. Very insightful.
You heard it from him. All right, so
I wanted to ask a question to like end on a lighter note.
Yeah.
What is like the funniest fake news headline you've seen?
Do you really want to? I don't know if you know what. It's somewhat appropriate. I found an article written by someone who clearly does not speak English, titled "The Rumor Come Out: Does Bruno Mars is Gay?" And
Okay.
I urge anybody to please read that article. It is hilarious. All right, so
Kelly?
Mine is definitely not appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah.
all
I don't
right.
read appropriate, I don't know.
All right. Well, let's just
Well,
make sure we're
what's
age
the
appropriate.
Well, it was just like Obama is a secret gay Muslim and 10 reasons why. And like, it was just like,
Yeah, all right. So as you can see, we take these kinds of things comically, but there's a lot of people who don't. So one thing to majorly look out for is like something at least you and I have talked about is at least said in those headlines itself is the headlines sound ridiculous. So if a headline sounds ridiculous, you should probably question it. In fact, you should just question anything. Always question. All right,
Question everything.
Question everything. I think that will be it.